On the morning of the 9th, carousel horse number 14 faced east. By the time Idris Valkamp reviewed his aerial footage that afternoon, it faced west, and no one had entered the ride platform in the intervening 6 hours. Valkamp had spent 11 years photographing dead places, water parks reclaimed by pine, shopping arcades where the escalators had fossilized mid-step. He knew the particular silence of a shuttered attraction, the way dust settles into a fabric you can smell before you see it. When the redevelopment firm handling the Kessler Grove demolition offered him 3 weeks of access, he accepted the same way he always did, with a thermos of black coffee and a drone case bungeed to his back seat. Kessler Grove had closed 22 years earlier after a financing collapse. The rides stayed because dismantling them cost more than abandoning them. He walked the midway on his first day and found ticket booths with prices still posted, a funnel cake stand with a hardened batter ladle, and the carousel at the centre under its faded canopy, 16 horses on a platform 41 feet across. The east-west discrepancy was the first thing he could not explain away. He assumed vandals. Kids climbed fences, but the horse was bolted and the bolts were rusted into a single seized mass. So he did what he did with everything. He photographed it. Over the next 4 days, he took roughly 900 images of the carousel from the ground and from the air. He built a grid on his laptop and compared them frame by frame during long motel evenings. Horse 14 moved, so did 9 and 3. Never while a lens pointed at them. He would photograph the ride, walk the perimeter, return and find a subtle rotation, sometimes a few degrees, sometimes a full reversal. The pattern held with an ugly consistency. Direct observation froze it. Absence of observation released it. He called people. He told himself he was building a proper record before the wrecking crews came. But the truth was, he wanted witnesses. A structural engineer named Prudence Achterberg came out on the 14th to assess the coaster, a wooden out and back called the Thunder Reel. She measured the track, checked her field notes against the original as-built drawings, and grew quiet. One of the 2 trains, welded to the track for storage decades earlier, was no longer where the drawings placed it. It sat 230 feet farther along, past a section of track that had partially collapsed. There was no continuous rail for it to have travelled. "That train can't be there," she said on camera, and then she laughed once, the way people do when a laugh is the only sound available. "I don't have anything after that. I checked my math 4 times. The math is fine. The train is wrong." A retired ride operator, Osei Lindqvist, agreed to walk the queue lines with us. He had run the carousel during the final 2 seasons. He remembered the smell of the grease, the way the calliope wheezed on cold mornings. In the switchback queue for the log flume, the stanchion chains had been coiled and left on the ground at closing. Lindqvist found them hung and threaded through the posts in the correct operating configuration. He rehung them himself the way employees were trained to at end of day. We photographed his work. The next morning the chains were strung again, tension even, exactly as they would be for a line of waiting guests. The maintenance office produced the detail that stopped the project manager from returning after his second visit. In a steel cabinet, we recovered the ride inspection binders. Daily logs signed and dated, the entries continued past the closing date. Not by weeks, by years. Routine carousel inspections logged every operating morning at 7:40, initialed in the same 3 sets of handwriting. One belonged to Lindqvist. The other 2 belonged to men he identified as Curtis Ballinger, who had died 14 years earlier, and a maintenance lead named Theodore Wysocki, who had relocated overseas and had not set foot in the state since the park closed. The last dated entry was 3 days in the future. We installed cameras. 4 units aimed directly at the carousel, time-stamped, motion-triggered, recording to separate drives. For 6 consecutive nights, every camera dropped its feed at precisely 8:19 and 40 seconds in the evening. The failure lasted between 4 and 7 seconds. The drives logged the interruption identically across all 4 units, an error string reading FRM lost 19, which the manufacturer confirmed was not a code their firmware could generate. When the footage resumed, the horses had turned. Achterberg stopped answering emails after the 4th night. Lindqvist came once more, stood at the edge of the platform for a long time, and asked us not to use his voice going forward. He said he kept hearing the calliope in his sleep, just the first 3 notes over and over, and then nothing. The demolition was scheduled for the 27th. Contractors arrived at dawn to stage equipment and found the carousel in a configuration no camera had captured. All 16 horses had turned outward, everyone aligned toward the main entrance gate a quarter mile down the cracked promenade. facing the ticket booths, facing the road, facing the direction guests would have come from. The demolition was postponed, pending a safety review. It has been postponed 4 times since. The site remains standing. The cameras were left in place at the property owner's request, still recording, still logging the same 8:19 interruption every night. Someone continues to update the inspection binder. This morning's entry was signed at 7:40 in 3 hands, and the ink was not yet dry.